Start
Okay.
us off, Callum.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to CastPod. Today we have a very special guest with us. For the very first time, our longtime friend, Carter. Say hi,
Howdy,
Carter.
howdy, howdy.
There it
I'm Woody.
is.
Howdy, howdy, howdy.
Fun fact, Carter actually played that one squeaky shark in Toy Story.
Yeah, which was, I mean, to be fair, I don't really remember it because, as you know, Toy Story came out in 1995, and I was
Mhm.
born in 1995. Right out of the womb, John Lasseter happened to be walking by the hospital. Weird, he was in Detroit for some reason, but he was walking by, and he was like, "Oh, dang, that baby's got the voice of a angel, or more specifically, a rubber shark." And he just was like, "Hey, ma'am, I know you just went through one of the most physically traumatizing and brutal experiences a human being can go through, but can I sign your baby to like a 10-day contract to just record this one rubber shark character we need?" And she was like, "Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't doing anything this weekend." And yeah, I get a surprising amount of residuals for that movie. You'd be surprised.
Oh, I can imagine.
Now that's an origin story.
Yeah, a lot of people have their own stories about how they made it to Tinseltown, made it big in La La Land, and that is mine.
And that's really how you got into the whole film business, isn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah. You know, I, like I, you know, it's not that I got into it in high school. It's no, I was born into it. Quite literally. Um,
Literally born a star.
Yeah, I mean, and they brought me back a lot, Pixar. They had me do a lot of different like I was one of those guys who's like famous, like that one guy who's like in all the Disney movies where they're like, "Oh, it's him again." In Bug's Life, I was the bird, like one of the baby
Ah,
birds. Yeah, that was fun. Really really pushed my acting repertoire at age 3. Um, for Toy Story 2, they originally were talking about giving me a titled role. I was going to be Wheezy. If you remember the plot, Wheezy is a rubber penguin
yeah.
that Squeaker broke. They briefly had me voicing before they found the old guy who like cleans Woody up. Before they committed to that voice, I was doing that for a little while. That was a fun experience. Ultimately, I ended up just being the sound in Al's Toy Barn when they go through the automatic doors. I was just the beep sound. Um,
Ooh.
yeah, inexplicably, they didn't have a sound effect for that, so they just were like, "Hey, can you just rattle this one out?" And I'm like, feels a little below my pay grade, but you know,
I
um,
think you did a spot on job for that, honestly.
So you're like
yeah, I really lost myself in that role.
you're the John Ratzenberger of the
Yes, I
background
couldn't.
world.
Oh, yes. In Finding Nemo, I was the jellyfish. I did like all the motion capture for all the jellyfish. Um, that one, oof. I'm gonna be honest. That was like rock bottom of my life. I completely lost. Like I was having massive like dysphoria as I was diving into my roles. I was like, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I am, but I'm a jellyfish now.
Weren't you like
Um,
6?
yeah. Hey, man. I've basically been the same height since like fifth grade. I hit identity crisis early. Um, in cars, I was like the background cars. I just made all of like the honk honk. Hey, I'm driving here. Honk honk. Um, in Ratatouille, that for some reason they really committed to me to just being every background character for a little while. So
Hmm.
from 2006 to 2007, I was alternating between being sentient talking cars saying, "Hey, I'm driving here," and a bunch of people in Paris going, "Ha ha." If you're wondering why a lot of the voices, to be fair, Ratatouille had a pretty tumultuous production history, so they kind of like when it came to like background voice actors, they were like, "It's fine, they can all sound the same."
It's really interesting that you mention your one role with the motion capture jellyfish. Because I heard, back in the day, back when you were doing that, even though you said it was a bit of a low point in your life, people were speculating that you could be the next Andy Serkis. I mean, in the motion capture world.
Oh
Like,
yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, I was like his rival. Like, Two Towers coming around that same time, and like we were both on the cutting edge, and people were like, "This guy is the heir. This is the heir to Andy Serkis." Obviously, his career. Well, he's having he has a modest career. He was a monkey a couple times. He was in those Marvel movies. Which is those mid-budget Marvel movies.
yeah.
Um,
What did
I
he spend?
respect
A
what
couple
direction.
million on them?
Um,
Maybe even 100,000 million pushing it.
yeah, spending. They finally started spending $1 million on those. They're putting in the big. They're putting in some nice bucks. Um, I to briefly pause the bit. It's actually interesting you bring up the Andy Serkis thing because I actually there's actually some interesting discussion about like his motion capture work because like not long after that the Polar Express came out and everyone was like, "Oh, what? This isn't what? How? What? This doesn't look like Gollum at all. Like Gollum was so good." And like there's always been whispers that Gollum was slightly more like just regular CGI and the motion capture was more just like guidelines. Like
Mm,
because the drop off from Gollum to Polar Express is so dramatic. Um, like people are like, okay, was the technology really there for Lord of the Rings, or were they like goosing it a little bit?
hmm.
Um, Sorry, just blanked out there. Anyway,
No,
yeah, me and Andy
yeah.
Circus, we met a lot of different times. We traded trade secrets. It was a good time. Um, I'm skimming through the Pixar films I was in. I forgot I was in Good Dinosaur. God, I filmed that like forever ago. I was I was a bunch of dinosaurs going like, "Hey, I'm stomping here. Hey, But honestly, they cut so much. Like they changed that movie so much. They might have cut my part out and they just didn't correct the IMDb page. Um,
I
you know,
Yeah, I can't quite remember that part, but I believe you definitely.
Well,
yeah,
Carter, you want to know what you can add to your IMDb page?
being on CastPod.
And possibly passing the always popular with our guest CastPod citizenship test.
Ah, of
Jesus
course.
Christmas.
And let me tell you, the traditional 5 questions definitely aren't the old 10 questions.
Of course, of course. Only the highest of quality here.
It's always a surprise. You only have to do it once. And let me tell you, the grade to pass is Rollo.
I'm fearless. Throw it. Hit me with it.
All right, Carter. When did CastPod start?
2000. It would have to be like 2014, I believe. If we're talking like really early CastPod.
Um, hold on.
Because if I remember correctly,
He has to look it up.
me and Nick did our little like podcast, and then you guys were like, we're gonna you calls your the podcast, we'll call it the Cast Pod.
It was 2016. However, you're really diving into question number 2 on do you know why CastPod started?
Yes, in retaliation. It was an act of it was an attack of, well, I guess who's the aggressor here? But it was a retaliation to Nicholas and Carter aggression.
How do I say this carefully? Yeah, it's 100% based off of that. I think it still
Right.
says in the channel's bio that I've never edited. This is the podcast built on spite.
I mean, I respect it. I mean, again, I am someone who frequently says there ain't a bridge I've walked across that I wouldn't gladly burn to the ground. So I respect it. I truly do.
I have more to ask about that saying in a little bit.
Go on.
All right, Carter.
That's understandable.
Which do you prefer more? Would you prefer a pound of feathers or a pound of bricks?
Which would you prefer? Was that the question?
That was the question. Which you would
All right.
prefer?
A pound of feathers because, like, you can sneak a pound of feathers into more places and it will still have the same level of impact as a pound of bricks. Like, if you bring a sack of bricks into, like, if you gotta go, like, beat someone up and they're, like, in the club, the bouncer's gonna be like, whoa, you can't bring that sack of bricks in here. What? I can't sanction that level of violence. But if I bring a pound of feathers in a bag, he'll be like, oh, that's like a new rave thing, isn't it? Oh, go ahead, you scamp.
You make a good point. I didn't think of it like that.
This is why
Like,
I like to have Carter involved on any of my projects that may or may not involve like having to improv things. Because of
you know,
answers like that.
sometimes you need someone who, you know, thinks inside the box, but is ready to kick one of the walls of the box down.
That's a good saying.
That is
Somebody
I
write
just
that
can't. That was completely off the top of my head. I'm going to write that down. My
Yeah, write that
therapist will
down.
get a kick out of that one.
just like good old set the bar low so you can only raise it. Kevin, 2015.
Another good one.
All right,
That's
Carter.
pretty.
If you could be any superpower, what would you be?
If I could be any superpower,
Yes, not have, be.
Be
flight,
move.
because everyone wants to fly.
Hmm.
Well,
Interesting.
that's like the whole thing in Shazam. It's like, would you choose invisibility or flight? And it's like you always pick flight because superheroes fly, and everyone wants to be a superhero.
Yeah, that's
Would
pretty true.
yeah? Would you have a cape though?
Um. Hmm.
No capes.
Well, yeah. I mean, I have gotten in arguments. I got in arguments with Edna Mode on the set of Incredibles about that.
Well,
Yeah. I don't even remember who the hell was I in Incredibles? I genuinely don't remember. But yeah, no, yeah, no, we had some debates about that because capes are cool, but I also understand they're completely impractical.
I really would have thought that you'd pick the power from Sky High to turn into a guinea pig.
I mean,
Let's
that
not
fits
forget
my
our
brand
highlighter
as
friend.
I mean
True.
that fits my brand as the Rat King, but like I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. Any power like that, like also Ant-Man, like being able to shrink, I would just be very paranoid because I'm like, all it takes is one bad move by someone else and I get smushed.
Mm-hmm.
I want to
That's
avoid
true.
anything that could cause me to get smushed. That seems like one of the more egregious ways to die.
So a way to only grow, and then you could be the smusher.
Well, see now that when you phrase it like that, it sounds like a weird like oh, this is how that guy gets his jimmies off way, and it's not that. But I mean, I don't know. Being huge would be cool because then you could climb the Empire State Building. That would be fun.
I have a question about Ant-Man as a little
Sidebar.
divergent thing. So when he shrinks, like the whole bit is like you have equivalent strength, right? Like to like a
Yes,
normal person, or is it equivalent strength to an ant that size, or like is it super strength, or what is it?
I believe they explain. So the way they explain it in the movies, at least, I would have to. They probably changed it 100 times in the comic.
Yeah,
But what they're going with now is that you change your size without changing your density. So effectively, your punch at normal size will have the exact same strength as a punch in of like a full, a punch in normal size
yeah,
is the same as a punch that's shrunk. The problem is because you're smaller, like that impact radius is so much smaller. That's why they're like, oh, you're basically a bullet now. Like because the surface area is so much smaller, you're basically just piercing through someone. So you need to learn how to punch properly so you don't just kill everyone.
but then like when you get big, does that mean you're like a balloon or
Yeah,
like
how
a
do you keep yourself
Macy's
upright?
Day parade balloon?
Yeah, my broad answer is they probably didn't think about that. They were just like, it would be cool if he's also giant man. But
Yeah,
I have to assume he alters the formula some way. So it's just like, oh, he's just very strong now.
gotcha. Okay.
Like, because he mentions that he like does a lot of tinkering with it and that it's like a very volatile science. Like his line when he does it the first time, he's like, and if I split in half or something, just keep running. And Winter Soldier goes, was he going to split himself in half?
That's fair. That's a fair point. For some reason, I was just thinking, like, if he's, like, as strong as a normal man, but tiny, if he did get stepped on, would it feel like if he got stepped on, but, like, at normal size, where it's like, that still hurts, but, like, it probably won't kill you?
How they, I mean, I think that's how they do it in the movie, because he like runs through that rave and doesn't get smushed, and he gets like punched a lot when he's little, and he doesn't get crushed. Like, I think
Yeah.
that's the idea. It's just like, I want to say get hit by a car, but getting hit by a car could also kill you. So
Yeah.
maybe getting like, I don't know, maybe like getting hit by like a medicine, like a big one of those big fitness balls. I imagine it's like where it's like, oh, that really hurt.
That would make sense. Wow. I hope everybody learned something today.
I already
That's the
did.
goal here.
Well, I'm the only one who has any science degrees here.
It's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why we brought Carter on today, was to teach us all some things, because he is the most educated person I've ever met. That's for sure.
Yeah. Like, I bet you guys didn't know that lizards are mammals.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Okay, good.
mean,
You did know that.
I thought that was a
All right. So you guys have been listening to me on when I do my science streams. Good.
yes, of course. Make sure to follow Carter on all socials for science streams.
Yes, the ratty scientist, which is funny because I don't study mice.
What?
Well, you would study rats.
Well, they're the same, right?
Oh, of course, right.
Yeah. Again, who's the science boy
I
here?
apologize.
Pain.
Sorry for insulting you.
just pain.
Yeah, that one. Even I was like, ugh. I feel like I feel like John Goodman like on a treadmill, sweaty from that one. Like, I need to dry. I need a towel.
Actually sounds like you're going to look for one. Well, I think we should explain, probably, even though we're very into it, that Carter's expertise are in the world of film.
Oh wait,
yes.
Carter, who do you like more, me, Callum, or Tom?
Wait, what?
He was missing a question.
Now, I love all of my children equally.
You gotta pick. There's one right answer.
No, well, the right answer is friendship. Though, Callum, can I talk to you in the corner real quick?
Yeah, real quick.
Yeah, like the corner of this chat. Yeah, just.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So you know you're number one, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I love Tom. I love Kev, but sometimes they can get on my gears a little bit. Like, you're cool.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, just don't tell Kevin that. I'm trying to build him up a little bit. Really.
No, yeah, definitely. It's between us.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Is he? Oh shit! Is he looking over here? Oh. Yeah. So anyway, the NFL draft is coming up, and that's always a big stress.
But you answer the question. Who's your favorite?
I already told you. I love all of you guys equally. But
it's me.
Damn it, Callum! I told you that in literal confidence.
Oh well, I thought.
All right. Yeah, well, I'm walking back.
I'll allow it. Technically, the correct answer is not Kevin. The correct answer is also definitely Tom.
See, that's why I was trying not to say it, because I'm trying to build your self-esteem. Now the whole thing's blown.
Well, that's okay. Let's talk about some movies. You've prepared some for suggestion for the audience, right?
Oh yeah.
Also,
you guys
passed Carter, by the way, if you couldn't tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys mentioned, you were like, hey, if you want to like bring on a list, we do listicles and stuff. If you guys want to, if you want to like bring on some things to pitch, go ahead. Mm-hmm. And I just did kind of like a random list of films that they're not my top 10. Well, some of them are in my top 10, but they're not like my top 10 films of all time. But they're films that I feel like, oh, I want to get on the little tree stump and advocate for these.
Go for it.
Okay. So number one, and this is honestly the one I reference. This is one of those ones I reference a lot and is like in my top 10. Millennium Actress, or sometimes titled The Millennium Actress. So it came out in 2001. It is directed by this, honestly, I would describe him as a genius of animation named Satoshi Kon. He unfortunately passed away at a very young age due to complications with cancer. But I would say this is his masterwork. So the basic premise is a pair of documentarians go and visit this reclusive female actress who's like living in sort of seclusion. And they reminisce about her career. She talks about why she started acting and sort of her adventures being an actress in this like really tumultuous and transformative time in Japanese history. And as they talk, the moments from her real life start to blur with the roles in her films, and they all sort of get pulled through this sort of like fantastical vision of her world. It is, I don't even know where to begin with this movie, but it is, it is visually arresting. It is endlessly creative. It is one of the best films about film, I would say, that's ever existed. It is genuinely emotionally devastating. The ending gets me every single time. Like, I've done 2 of those Fandango events to see it, even though I already seen it like 5 times. And both times, I just have to I'm like, God, I hope no one else in the theater notices I'm crying, because I don't feel like, trying to be macho and doing more of like the stoic nod and like flex as I think about, cool dogs and like cars. Yeah, it is a genuine masterpiece of animation. It is weird in all the right ways. It is poignant in all the right ways. It's weirdly funny in ways you wouldn't expect. I couldn't recommend it more highly. And while I'm in this neighborhood, honestly, Satoshi Kon only got to make 4 films in his life. I would recommend all 4 of them. Perfect Blue, which is like a psychological horror film about a pop star turned actress who starts having trouble discerning fiction from reality. Tokyo Godfathers, which is about 3 homeless people in Tokyo who find an abandoned baby on Christmas Eve. And Paprika, which is basically like Inception, but very, 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 very anime. Originally, it was going to be a live action movie, but then Inception came out and they were like, maybe we shouldn't bother. Every single one of his films is a masterpiece of animation, and I couldn't recommend them more highly.
I know you've talked about Millennium Actress definitely before. That's not the guy who was Ghibli Man's assistant, was it?
No. He never he was separate from Ghibli. I always forget who he like what studio he worked with for all of his stuff. Actually, I can just check. Yeah, I think Madhouse distributed or produced most of his stuff, and I'm not familiar enough with anime companies to be like, yes, the Madhouse, they made this, and the other thing.
Right. Yeah. I thought that because I know you said one time that his like assistant or whatever ended up dying from like overwork, even though he's like really talented or something. Isn't that right?
Yes. Yeah, what you're referencing, and I might as well just throw this on the list too, because now that it's available on HBO Max, it's more accessible than ever. Whisper of the Heart. Whisper of the Heart, which was made by Yoshifumi Kondo. So basically, he was kind of like Hayao Miyazaki and Toshiro Suzuki's protege. Like, the idea was like, okay, Studio Ghibli, and I'm probably butchering the history because I'm trying to do a truncated version of it. The 2 big directors at Studio Ghibli were Miyazaki and Takahata. Takahata did Tales of Princess Kaguya, was his last work before he died, and that's considered like his masterpiece. Anyway, they kind of realized like, okay, we need to mix this up a little bit. We need to bring in more talent because like we can't, we need more directors. Like, it's a problem a lot of studios run into, where it's like, look, if we don't bring in new voices and we don't bring in new talent, we'll stagnate. And Kondo had like worked on them on like a lot of their films, and it was finally time for him to make this movie. Hayao Miyazaki wrote it and apparently was very like helpful and hands-on in the production, but it was Kondo's vision. Short version is, it's about this 14-year-old junior high school kid, and it's it's kind of a hard film to explain because it's really just kind of like a film about life. Like, she's growing up and she's like, I want to become a writer. And through a series of circumstances, she gets swept up in this like fun mystery that inspires her to try and write more. And it's really about like finding yourself, finding what you want to do with your life, and figuring out how you get there, should you go there, and it's all tied together with this really compelling sort of framing device of this antique shop she keeps visiting. Another film that emotionally wrecks me. There's a scene in which a bunch of characters perform "Country Roads," the West Virginia song. Emotionally devastating. One of the most beautiful scenes in any movie I've ever seen. But yes, Kondo, unfortunately, and because he was working on this, and then he helped like do a lot of the heavy lifting on Princess Mononoke. And he even at the time said, "I'm starting to worry. Takahata's trying to kill me with stress." He ended up having an aneurysm and passing away. And by a lot of accounts, that really changed how Miyazaki approached like working with other people and, the entire concept of work, because he felt so guilty about what happened.
Yeah, I remember when you were saying that previously, and that's kind of wild.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. And like I'm very small in film and theater right now. Like I'm in that phase where I'm trying to prove myself. But the biggest thing is like I've always pushed, like a lot of people like me push against that, like, oh, if you do something you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And it's like, no, this stuff is still work. This stuff is like really hard work. And if you're not careful, it can really consume you. And it's really important to have that healthy work-life balance, even when your work is a craft, like making a movie or a video game or writing. And unfortunately, we lost a very talented lost a very talented writer and director, and his life ends up becoming a cautionary tale about that. Although on a similar note, this one I wanted to throw in there too. Porco Rosso, and I swear these are not all anime. I'm not a weeb. Like, I know it's looking bad right now, but hear me out on this one. I reference Porco Rosso a lot, probably more than any other human being east of the Mississippi. So Porco Rosso is kind of the forgotten Hayao Miyazaki movie. It was made in, was it 80? It was 92. And it is it's set just after World War I, and it is about a former Italian pilot named Porco Rosso. During the war, he got cursed and is now a pig person. And it's about him living as a bounty hunter during this sort of like awkward period between World War I and World War II, as like the Adriatic, like the area of the Adriatic is getting swept up in fascist movements, and sort of the tension is slowly building into World War II. And it's about this one summer he spent. It's about this one summer where he gets challenged by a rival pilot from America, and sort of the action, the drama, and the romance they both get swept up in. It is weird. I would say it's his most American film. Like, it feels really retro. It feels like it belongs in the same category as like Casablanca, as this like classic American Hollywood film. It just has such a sense of style and class. It's hysterical. It's Porco Rosso might be one of my favorite characters in any fiction, just because, well, one, it's just funny that he's like just a guy, but who happens to have a pig face and a little mustache. That's just endlessly funny to me. But also, like, I don't know, it's just this really nice story about like this sort of like, you don't want to know me, I'm a pig, and kind of him learning how to redeem himself and sort of love himself again.
I do like pig faces, I must say.
Yes, it is endlessly funny.
Especially with mustaches.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Mustaches make everything better. Look at schnauzers, for example.
Yes, and like this film is set in an era where it's like the mustache makes the man, and if Like Curtis has this really lame, his rival Curtis has this really lame mustache, and you're like, oh, this is clearly the villain of the picture. Yes, like Parker Rosso embodies that, like, when a famous artist has a film or like a book that no one talks about, it's like, is this forgotten because it's not that good, or is everyone else an idiot? And this very much is, I believe, the case of everyone being an idiot and sleeping on one of the best fairy tale stories of the 20th and 21st century.
It's the children that are wrong.
Yes, it is in fact the children that are wrong. Which I love. Miyazaki is sometimes dismissive of this one. He's like, oh, it's a kid's film. And I'm like, I don't know. It's about, like, planes are getting shot out of the sky. People are getting, like, punched. There's, like, blood. Like, it's a pretty intense, like, and, it's like about, like, complicated adult romance, because his main love interest is, like, I've dated 3 seaplane pilots. One crashed over France. One, like, got blown out of his plane over, like, the Mediterranean. And I just found out my 3rd husband's body was found. And it's like, I don't know, it's like it's a pretty dramatic film to be dismissed as a kid's movie.
He's kind of like that, though. I mean, he definitely has a thing for pigs.
Yes. Well, he draws himself as a pig a lot, which is just endlessly fascinating to me. He seems like a very self-aware person in terms of, like, his strengths and his weaknesses.
Mm.
Moving on, another one I'd really recommend is, and this is kind of cheating because it's a series, but each episode's only like 11 minutes, and a whole season's only like 120 minutes. So I consider it's basically a movie.
Is it
Infinity. Well, I don't need to tell people to see Phineas and Ferb. Like, they know they got to see Phineas and Ferb. Like, come on. I would recommend Infinity Train.
Ooh.
Okay.
Yes.
I have a beef with that show.
Go on.
I had an idea in high school for a very similar concept to it. And
really?
Now and now it's an actual series years later. And I'm like, damn it would have sold.
What was your version? Like, what was your take on the Never-Ending Train drama?
So yeah, mine was kind of based off of like the main character would stumble upon this like train that, like, each car had a couple of different doors, and every door you go through on the train would lead you to some sort of alternate universe where that episode's shenanigans happen.
Oh wow, it really is similar.
I know. And of course you meet friends all the way, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
And then that's as far as I got. And then I just literally went, it's like, that would be a show I might watch. And then I went, nah. And then I thought nothing of it. And it annoys me because when I heard that concept, I'm like, oh, that's a pretty interesting. And I'm like, I had this exact idea. So I refused to watch that show out of spite.
Damn. Well, if it makes you feel any better, it's just inevitable with how much content comes out. Ugh,
Oh, yeah.
that word. But how much content comes out, like, no idea is original.
No.
Like, literally, like, my big pet project forever has been the Soul Scouts.
Mm-hmm.
And I discovered a new show on Netflix that is about a bunch of kids, like, going around trying to interview ghosts. And I'm like, oh, that's really similar.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I guess Soul Scouts is never going to Netflix.
Yeah, HBO Max, Peacock, all these platforms now.
Oh God, see it only on Peacock.
Soul Scouts, Paramount Plus.
I like Paramount. Like, everyone dunks on Paramount Plus. I always do free trials for Paramount Plus. One, because they have CBS, and I like watching football games. Because my favorite team, the Buffalo Bills, is an AFC team, and CBS owns all the AFC teams.
Okay, hold on. Before this goes any further, we have
Uh-oh.
also in our friends group chat banned Carter from representing the Bills because of the amount of times he backs down on his claims about the Bills.
No, okay.
Nope, not going to be a fan this season.
Okay, here's where I was. The Bills were stuck in a perpetual, like, 8-8 or 7-9 record, they always were like, oh, we're so close to the playoffs. If only this, then the other thing happens. And they never did. And I was like, this is so exhausting. I'm tired. There's clearly no plan. But then they brought in a new coach who was like, he's like, I have a vision for this team. They brought a new general manager who's like, I understand what you want to do, coach, and I'm going to bring in the right talent. And now they're the best team, one of the like 4 or 5 best teams in the NFL. And
Yeah.
I don't think that makes me a bad fan. That just was, I felt aimless and lost at sea. And now that they have, because even when they weren't like their first year with Josh Allen, they were only like 6-10. But I was like, okay, but clearly I can see what they're trying to do here. Like I'm invested in this team. Like I want them to do well.
And you
Like,
jumped back on the train when they were winning.
well, I graciously invited all of you when the Eagles started pooping up the joint. But yes, Infinity Train, if you're not familiar with it, basic premise is it's an anthology series. Every season's different characters. It's about this weird train that like finds people and like basically traps them on board. As the seasons progress, you realize how malicious the train is as a concept and like how kind of fudged up it is. Oh, wait, you said I can swear on here.
Yeah.
How fucked up the train is. And in this last season, which for now is said to be the final season because HBO Max isn't renewing it.
Oh.
Without spoiling too much, the person who runs the train is talking about it, and someone asks them like, "Oh, and if they don't figure it out," he goes, "Oh, well then they'll die on here." And it's like it feels kind of like a relief for you to finally just admit that's the like fail state for this train. Like it's not good, that's evil, but like it's good to know like the weird vibes we were picking up were valid. But yeah, basically like every season starts with a character. They get sucked up and trapped on this train. They have a number on their hand and they have to go through each little car, which much like Kevin said, it's like its own little pocket universe. And they got to get their number down to 0. And the cars are specifically designed to get them to kind of pause and reflect on where their life is and confront whatever it is that got them on this train. Because it becomes apparent, like the people who get stuck on this train, it's because something happened in their life that is emotionally holding them back or stunting them in some way. I guess without spoiling too much, like the first season, the main character is this girl named Tulip. Her parents are going through like a really ugly divorce, and that is kind of and because that's in the first episode, I don't think that's a spoiler. Like that's the inciting incident that gets her on the train. Her being like, okay, it's okay, we can, I'll be okay through this, and they'll be okay through this. And that's kind of and it's just such a good concept. Like, sorry, Kevin, that I'm like high-fiving other people for your idea, but it is like
it's fine
because it's like
I want them to be successful.
It's like, yeah, it just creates such an easy to understand and easily to empathize with emotional backbone for the story. And then that just lets each individual episode be like its own fun little creative. And it's like, okay, we've got the emotional spine down. Let's just be fun for every episode. Let's be creative. Yeah, I don't want to spoil too much because it's, it is a bit of a mystery show. They are really campaigning hard to get HBO to change their mind. And, I hope so, because it sounds like they still have a lot of big ideas they can play with.
Is there, without spoiling too much, because you said it's kind of an anthology series, is there actually like an overarching plot that connects them other than the fact that they're all taking place on the train and whatnot?
I would say yes. Like there is a very clear timeline in which everything happens. Like, through context clues and people talking, you realize like where each story takes place in relation to the others. There is like a timeline, particularly in season 4, you figure out it gives you a really big puzzle piece in the timeline of like, oh, when this big change happens on the train. And the characters intersect enough that it creates an overarching story. In particular, like in the 3rd season, there's a moment where they just finished up in a car and they're just walking to the next car and they bump into someone else. And that was like a genuine like, oh, moment. Where it's like, oh my God, it's all coming together.
Yeah. I'll have to watch that one.
Yeah, I'd really recommend it. Like I said, it's all on HBO Max. It's a pretty breezy watch. Each season works as its own little movie. I couldn't recommend it more.
Hmm.
All right, I'm gonna do a live action one because I've realized I've done nothing but animation so far. I will say
Hey,
I do.
we love animation here.
We do.
Yes, I do too. Like halfway through I went to NYU and I did realize kind of late into my run, I'm like, man, I really love animation. And I just
Mhm.
tried to take as many animation courses as I could. Um, so this one I'm gonna recommend, but I don't know where you can watch it. That's the only problem.
Hmm.
Like it's not like a widely available movie, but it is called Christmas in July. So you might only be able to. All right, they do sell it on Blu-ray and DVD, but I don't know if you can watch it like to rent anywhere.
Huh.
It is a very old movie. It is, I believe, it was 1940 on the dot. Um, so it's like kind of a hijinksy comedy. Basic premise is this guy this guy enters a competition at work to he works for a coffee company and the coffee company's looking for a new catchphrase for like a new like slogan for their brand. And like a low ranking worker who's like, man, I think I got the smarts. I think I got the potential for something great. He enters a competition and as a prank his coworkers trick him into thinking he won and not realizing that he's been tricked. He goes on a crazy spending spree and the whole like this whole little corner of New York City kind of gets swept up in his hijinks. And it kind of embodies like when we talk about like old Hollywood, this movie kind of embodies it for me where I'm like, this is just a delightful time with like pretty, funny, charming people. Everyone's funny. There's not a single joke that misses. Um, like look, and the ending has one of the funniest moments in any movie ever. Which again, I won't spoil. Honestly, could end up being on Paramount Plus because it is a Paramount picture.
Hmm.
Um, but yes, it is endlessly charming and funny. Uh, I remember seeing it in film school and being like, "Oh, this is the height of comedy." And yeah, I'd really recommend that one if you can find it. Um,
Yeah, I've never heard of that, honestly. But
yeah, a
not
lot of people.
surprised
Yeah, a lot of
with
people
how old it
haven't.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know about it. I think the context was literally like we had to watch a documentary. Like it was a documentary about Vietnam, and my teacher was like, "Yeah, this thing is really heavy, guys. So I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna play this afterwards, just as like a palate cleanser, so you all feel better going into the next day."
Nice.
And he was right on the money for that one.
Hmm. I would like to make 2 quick side notes. Speaking of movie things,
Mhm.
CastPod
um,
the movie being announced right now.
I wish.
I can't believe you
Um,
guys got Joaquin Phoenix for the role of Callum.
yeah, I mean, I wanted Ryan Reynolds, but he just wasn't available.
I mean,
Yeah,
at least
they're
you got a
going.
person. I got Bigfoot to represent me.
Oh, I didn't think we'd get him. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
anyways,
I
he
mean,
agreed to
final
do it
running
years
was
ago.
Bigfoot and Zach Galifianakis. So
I mean, the funny thing is, Bigfoot agreed to do it like months ago, but negotiations were so hard because he just kept saying,
that's true. We had to keep going out into the woods and whacking a big stick against a tree, and then we realized that that number was no longer available, so we had to find a different tree.
yeah.
But
And
anyways,
you had to teach him sign language, which was a pain in the ass.
luckily Kong was there shooting for Godzilla versus Kong, and he kind of stepped up for that role.
Yeah, he really carried the weight on that one. I'm
Anyways,
sorry, what were you
there.
saying?
No, it's fine. That was good stuff. So this is just an interesting movie side note. One time, I decided in college to watch some older kind of classic movies, and one of them was what was it called? Psycho,
mm-hmm.
like that the OG
the
shower scene
Yes,
stabbing.
that's
Yeah.
Psycho. Yes. I was gonna
Um,
put that on there, but I'm like, people know Psycho. They don't need me to remind them to watch Psycho.
well, you know how in the beginning of that movie it starts out with like the date and the time,
Mm-hmm.
like it
Mm-hmm.
pans over the city or whatever, and it has like the exact day and time. I watched that movie on that same day, at the exact time that it listed,
Get the hell out of here.
without any prior knowledge.
That's pretty
Literally
cool.
just randomly picked it up, put it in. That part came up, and I was like, "How does it know?" And I was like, "Oh my god, this is completely random. What are the odds?" But it's also really freaky because it's a horror movie. So I was like, "Oh god, I guess I'm cursed now."
Yeah, you're gonna get. Oh, I'm terrified of shower curtains because of that movie. Like, if I have the option to shower in a shower that uses like a glass door or
Mhm.
clear curtains or an alternative to curtains, I will take it. Um, you
I
know,
mean, it's like nowadays it's a bit of a silly movie, but it was really odd at the time. And also, fun fact, my grandmother's maiden name on my dad's side is Bates.
really.
Like Bates
Yes,
Motel?
exactly.
Have they ever mentioned that? Because that's a funny thing. How they. How have I never known this? That's such a funny little like fact.
Yeah, right. It was really, really interesting. But I thought I'd just throw that in because we're talking about older movies. But my other side note is that how you said the Millennium Actress always gets you at
Mm-hmm.
the end. So I have never watched a movie or show that has made me actually cry.
Really?
Yeah, not once. But there have been some that have gotten very close, I will say.
Honestly, you know what? Actually, like I didn't cry, but it
The
was
Lion
more of
King,
like the I guess the nostalgia feel of it or like the awe of it.
The
And like
Lion King.
I mean, yes, that has made me cry before. But last night
Mm,
A&E has this new series called like Seeking WWE Treasures, and they're trying to find basically setting up for an unannounced museum for the WWE.
uh,
And I'm a big Undertaker fan, and it was an episode all about him. And when
mm,
I was looking, I was like watching and witnessing like all the real ancient artifacts that he had, like
mm,
real
Oh,
essential.
that's
And
cool.
he's someone that he stayed in character so hard for like 99% of his career that like other people they've given it away for children's hospital charities, events, this, that, and the other thing. He just
mm.
had a storage locker of it, and it's like because he stayed in character that deep that he's like nobody gets this in ring gear like
Mhm.
for just anything. And he's going like they're going through the stuff, and I'm just sitting here in my chair watching, and I'm like, oh my god, like some at some point freaking out, and at some point I'm like, this is like at least for me finding buried treasure. Literally, I'm like, these are
Like
like
of the show.
yeah, one of
God,
his
that is really cool.
what's it called? Like one of his coats, his um coat
One
with
of his
like the
big
purple
trench
inner
coats.
line, like yeah,
Mm,
the big trench coat with like the inner purple lining. I think they
mhm.
appraised it for like how because of how original it was and how significant it is, somewhere in the $50,000 range.
Whoa.
Yep.
So you putting a bid in on that or what?
God no. If I had
Dude,
$50,000, I'd work on the CastPod Conservation Center.
But segue. Um, that is interesting though.
Yeah.
But to go back to the crying thing, movies that have gotten me very, very close are Eight Below, the movie about the sled dog team
oh
that
Oh,
God,
that
this
basically
one.
took
all
us. Were
died.
you on the same school trip as
Yeah,
me?
I
I
was
think
there.
so. Yeah, I think we all watched that. And like, what a horrible movie! Why would anyone make that?
Yeah. These are
His Final
like elementary
Destination
school
was
kids
Dog
too.
movies sell. Like
awesome.
Sydney complains about this all the time. She's like, if I have to see one more goddamn white people dog movie in my life. That was when there was like that glut of like 8 in a row, like all a part of like the Dog's Purpose like
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
franchise. She's like, I'm so tired of this genre.
I mean, that was so sad. Marley and Me was, oh, but it didn't get me as much.
I actually
Um,
didn't go on that trip. I had a
No?
I had a doctor's appointment that day, and they were having a field trip, and my dad was like, "Yeah, you can't make both, so you're just not gonna go to school today." And I went, "Darn."
Oh,
Sad.
I put
that's
up.
why you haven't talked to your dad in like 6 months. Or years. I was wondering why. I didn't
Yeah.
want to ask because
No,
it
that
just
was
felt like a touchy subject.
no,
But
that was a winning from education Kevin's standpoint of suckers. They still have to go to school.
Dang.
My
much
dad was
dog
just like, "Nah, I'm
breathing.
not dealing with this. You're not
Just watch.
going."
Let's watch some more dogs die in school. Yeah, that's what we want. Another
That
thing
one
that really
weirdly did
got
make me
me.
cry.
Well, I guess this wasn't a movie. This was a documentary. Of one of the Oscar documentaries, like 2 years ago now, I guess, which was about Alzheimer's and dementia patients. Because like old people with dementia just like really get to me.
Oh
That's just unreasonably sad. Which is why the first prequel of Planet of the Apes with what's his face?
Draco
Franco?
Malfoy.
Well, also Draco Malfoy.
I mean, yeah. Wasn't he in the second one though? Or was that
Uh,
the first one too?
No,
he
that
was
was the
in the
first one.
first one because it's implied that Franco dies because of the monkey disease. And I know it has a real name in the movie, but I just like calling it the
Yeah.
monkey
No,
disease.
the one with Franco and Franco's
Yeah,
dad.
and his dad has Alzheimer's, and that's
Yeah.
like the
Oh, it made me
for
so
the
sad.
Yeah.
That was so sad. And then what was the other one? There was another one that was fresh in my mind of something that I was like, wow. Oh, Coco, that
Really?
animated movie.
oh
Because the
no,
grandmother,
that movie when that movie literally starts tuning up to emotionally shatter you, like when a character's like, hold on, let me make sure I'm like, yep,
mhm.
just tuning this right now. All right.
Yeah.
Honestly, that
Oh,
might be my
man.
favorite Pixar film.
That Carter, who were you in Coco?
Oh, they didn't. They were, they were like, this is a cultural, like, you are white. It wouldn't be cool for you to be in this one. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to be a ogre about that. I respect it. I'll go
True.
back to my swamp. Yeah, I was cool about that one. When I wasn't in Incredibles 2, that's when it got really toxic. But
Mm.
they tried to make up for it by letting me be the slime in Onward, and I was like, "Hey, I'm oozing here," but they cut my line, so clearly there's still some bad blood or ooze.
Yeah, what's up with that? That was my
I don't
favorite
really,
character too.
I don't know. The whole game's politics. It's Pete. Pete Docter's so busy running all of Disney Animation right now. If he was still focusing on Pixar, he would, he'd be putting his muscle to get me some roles. I better show up in Lightyear. I know I'm not in Luca, and Turning Red is another one where I'm like, well, that seems like a personal story, so I'm not gonna I'm not gonna bend arms to get into that one.
Right, of course.
Yeah, God, a lot of movies get me emotional. Well, oh wait, first side note
Mm.
on Planet of the Apes.
Sure.
That first Planet of the Apes movie rules, right? Like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
expectations for that were so low. Everyone's like, "Oh God, why are you rebooting this? Like, we don't need a reboot of this." And then it was like, "Oh, actually, a really smart, compelling movie." And the, the bit where Caesar talks for the first time is maybe one of my favorite moments in a movie
Oh
theater.
my god, that was cool.
Like I'm so used to like we go to we all try to go to Marvel movies together or relatively close to each other, so our reactions are this similar,
Mhm.
but or at least we get our reactions at the same time. And like you're so used to like the sort of like applause moments and stuff for that, but like to have a real genuine like audience reaction where to set the scene for people who don't remember, like Caesar, who will be like the leader of the Planet of the Apes, is in this like monkey preservation thing, which is kind of run by this sort of like abusive a-hole who also happens to be Draco Malfoy.
I was gonna say, I don't think he. I think he was pretty much just Draco Malfoy.
Yeah, more or less, honestly, yeah. And he's tasing Caesar. Caesar takes the taser and like knocks him out. And the guy says, "Get your hands off me, you damn dirty ape." And Caesar just pauses for a moment and then goes, "No!" and the movie goes silent, and the audience loses their freaking minds. Like 30% of them gasp, 30% of them laugh, 30% of them scream. Every reaction was valid, every emotion was valid. And like from that point on, everyone's just losing their minds in this watching this movie because it's like, this is insane. Anything can happen now.
I was
It's-
on team laugh for that.
I feel like I probably laughed, but it's interesting because like we all knew it was going to come at some point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they
Like-
rule the world eventually. So
Like it's one of I think that's the masterwork of the movie though, because it's like, you know, in our head we're like, well, we know how Planet of the Apes ends. The Statue of Liberty, damn you all to hell. It's actually shocking for a human to speak as opposed to a monkey. But at the same time, they're playing it so like serious and like grounded. They're like, maybe
Yeah.
they won't. Maybe, especially because they like actually do creative things where it's like, oh, they sign. They can communicate through sign language. So your brain kind of like forgets that they can talk.
hmm
So then when it happens, it's like the whole filing cabinet just got thrown at you of like all of this stuff you forgot.
Yeah.
it's also crazy how we came back to Andy Circus.
Yeah. Well, you know, our careers
I mean-
are intertwined permanently, you know?
Yeah. I will say,
know?
I do quote apes together strong on a regular basis,
It's a good line.
specifically at work.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't do it there, but like
Oh,
I
no.
respect it.
I'll be trying like I'll be talking to the high schoolers and they'll be like, "Oh, this person was supposed to like do this," and I'm like, "But they're doing other things, so you do it," and they're like, kind of questioning it, and I'm like, "Listen, a wise man once said, apes together strong.'"
What a boss.
Oh, good
What a role model.
It's really leading the pack with that one. All right.
A couple more I can run through. Oh, I'm sorry. What were you gonna say?
I would say we are looking to be running a little low on time. So, Carter,
Oh,
what is
dear.
your most underrated movie that you got on your list?
Oh, here we go.
Most underrated movie. Okay, give me 1 second to think about this.
Okay.
Well, you
I
have a
would
second. I was gonna plug something, but if you got something already,
Okay,
No,
I
you're
got
ready.
it. I got it. This movie. Okay. It underrated slash people have never heard of this one. It's called Bernie, and no, not that one. It is a fake mock. It's like a mockumentary, fake documentary about a real life story. It's about this like funeral home director in like some part of Texas, performed by Jack Black. He ends up marrying the widowed, like wealthy woman of this town, and they end up getting in you know, she ends up being kind of abusive, and he kills her. And this movie is a comedy. It's
Oh.
like a pitch black comedy, and the whole movie is about this guy Bernie, this like funeral ranger guy, being the most beloved person in this town. So naturally, when this happens, everyone immediately sides with him. Where it's like, oh well, yeah, obviously she had like if you upset Bernie, well then he probably had a good reason to do it. And it's about, and then it becomes about, you know, the prosecutors and like the sheriffs who come in to investigate this, having to do the kind of unprecedented move of moving the trial to a different town because they're like, oh, we're not going to get a fair trial here. Like he's just going to be declared innocent no matter what. And it's a really compelling and weird movie. It is pitch black, like the pitchest black comedy. Like the scene where he shoots her, and like the scene that immediately follows that, I won't spoil it, but is the most hysterical transition from one scene to another I've ever seen in a movie. It is probably Jack Black's best performance. That's when I'm like, oh, he's actually like a great actor. It's got Matthew McConaughey before he won his Oscar, and he was kind of working his way back up. And it's like a film that actually challenges you because you're like, yes, he did this bad thing, but also he's clearly a good person. And he's like, he did all of these things in the town to try and like redeem him. Like he spent all of her money trying to like help build the town up. So you're like, well, does that make up for it? And like, yes, the prosecution are framed as kind of like bad guys, but again, they're just trying to deliver justice. It is an interesting, weird, compelling movie, and you can watch it on free for you on. It was originally on Netflix, and now it's on YouTube for free.
Ooh.
So
this sounds like it's like something about Mary, but real dark.
honestly, that's not too bad a connection. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's very it's a weird one. Like it's made by the same guy who made Boyhood, and it feels like the polar opposite of Boyhood in terms of tone, energy, and just approach to making movies. But I will say, if you sit down and give it a fair shake, you will have a blast with it.
Oh, I think that's. It sounds like a good suggestion. I think I might just have to go and check it out. And
And
I
because
think
it's
the
on
people
YouTube,
at
you can get
home
double time.
would like to check out some things as well, specifically from you, Carter. Where can the people find you if you want to be found, that is?
Okay, well, there was a tax evasion problem, but it's probably fine. But you can find me. I do a lot of different things. I work at the New York Renaissance Fair, which will theoretically be back someday.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I do a musical comedy show there
We
called
have
Chit Chat.
we have plans to go. I hope you know when it.
True.
Oh, yeah. Well, see, then I'll have to, I'm not sure if they do it this year. I'm still not 100% sure I do it. But if you guys commit to going a year, at the bare minimum, I will have to be like, hey, I'm a legacy. Can I just dress up for like a weekend and help out?
Mhm.
Like, you don't have to pay me. I'll just like be here because you guys got to see me in like the full regalia.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
but
We've committed to going. I don't know if it was on an official like CastPod video or what, but Team CastPod has committed to going to the Renaissance Fair when you were there.
It's true.
yeah, you guys would really dig it. You can also find me at Hold Space Theater Collective, which is what I've been working on the last few months. A live reading of a script I wrote called The Soul Scouts is on there. I'd highly recommend that.
True. I watched that live.
I watched it live, and it's actually saved on my YouTube watched later list as well. I've watched it more than once.
Excellent.
And
let's
you also
see.
stream occasionally.
Yes, I occasionally scream under the Rat King 14. That is
Scream.
the Rat King XV or XIV. The story behind that is too convoluted to get into here.
Rat King's I through Rat King I or XIII.
The Roman numeral for 14. I have a podcast called The Disney Desk. We're looking for ways to reboot that now that me and Sydney are both vaccinated,
Nice.
where we talk about all things Disney. You can find that on Spotify. And hopefully within the next few months, you will also be able to see a written published work of mine as a part of a behind the scenes pod, or I'm trying to think how to describe this. But recently I wrote an episode of a narrative podcast from Now with Milk Productions that once I get the information for, I'll be able to share with you guys.
Ooh.
Nice. That's very exciting.
We'll be on the listen for that.
Yeah, I'm really excited. The script came out really good, and it seems like they had a lot of talent for the voice acting.
Heck yeah.
And
Well, go on.
I was gonna plug some of our own stuff for a second.
What?
Yeah, that's
Ridiculous.
right. Because this is far from Carter's last appearance on the CastPod channel. You know how I was talking about rewatching Soul Scouts?
Yes.
That's because I would watch it while working on the CastPod official D&D campaign, Search for Avatar Kuruk.
Dun dun dun.
That'll be streamed live on the Ballyache channel every other Sunday-ish, starting next Sunday, the 9th, because this comes out in the future. And
yeah.
every other week it'll be streamed live around. I'll be hopping on somewhere between 7:30 and 8, and the session won't start till around 8. And then the weeks that we're not streaming, that's when the old stream's gonna get posted to the YouTube channel. And guess what?
What?
Both of these guys are gonna be in it.
No.
We had session 0 2 nights ago, and where we all like answered questions, kind of got a feel of everyone's characters. Let me tell you, some of the funniest characters right here. Big fans of what they are. And
yeah, I gotta say, I was really impressed with what everyone came up with. Especially you, Cal. You've never played D&D before. I was really excited to see what you rolled out there for your first go.
Thank you, thank you. I mean, what can I say? Improv is my life, so
And
I do
I'll
what I can.
give a little tease of Carter's name. As far as the party is aware, her name, because Carter is a girl, is Fang. And Callum,
Yes.
do you want
Yes,
to talk about your character's name? The
yes.
best name in the entire campaign. No one competes.
My character's name is Sirach. Is a waterbender, and also his last name is Lobster. So yeah,
That's right.
that's a pun for you, for those of you playing at home.
Good old Ciroc Lobster.
And yes, it did take me 15 whole minutes after
It
he
took
said it to go,
Carter way
oh!
too long.
I just sat there like the dummy thick good boy I am, and then just went like, oh!
Yeah, I'm very excited for that. I think
Yeah,
we're gonna have
it'll be fun.
a good time. So if you enjoyed today's episode, definitely go check that out because more shenanigans similar to this, more dynamics like this soon to come, and we will be sure to have Carter back on the show in the future for other things.
Yay!
We got a conspiracy theory to go over too.
Oh yeah, we do.
Oh,
So
God.
make sure to come back for that. Check out all of Carter's thingamabobs. Check out our thingamabobs, and we will see you next time.